Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for me to talk about gun. I've recorded this whole video and then I realized that I didn't go in very good chronological order. I'm going to talk about Gun's shortcomings as a leader and how he got me involved in the clan community. Now, for those of you who don't know, I used to stream MineZ2. I was fairly popular, and Gun recruited me to the UTC in MineZ2 because I was streaming and I gave them good clout. Now, I was in the UTC for probably about 3 weeks before I left, and I left with Telma, who was an E-girl. There's only like 6 people in the UTC in MineZ2. It was just Gun's regiment. And basically there's a falling out between me and Gun where he made fun of me and Telma for refusing to drop splash potions for drink potions right before the first MineZ2 event where you had to bring your own gear. And Gun just wasn't happy with us and made fun of us, and me and Telma weren't having it and went and made our own clan. At this point, me and Gun weren't friends for a while. It wasn't until after I had quit MineZ2, me and Gun made up, and Gun came and hung out in my streams on Minecraft. It was like Minigame Mondays is what it was called. It wasn't called Minecraft Mondays, that wasn't my thing. But Gun came and played minigames on Mondays, and then I remember I went to a few drills with the UTC when I was streaming in 2015. I talked about that in the last video. Throughout the summer of 2015, I played MineZ. I just didn't play it with the UTC. I played with an E-girl, and me and Gun and the E-girl did some dungeons. We did some trading. I actually met the girl in real life, and she wanted to rejoin the UTC. Or she wanted to join the UTC, because I would talk about all these stories about all my glory days for the 3 weeks I was in the UTC, and I talked about drills. And I was like, we're not joining. I'm like, there's no way with the way Irish treats women that you are joining the UTC. I'm like, that's just not happening, and I'm not going to join if you can't. I'm like, so let's just not, and she, like, understood, so we didn't. It wasn't until after she broke up with me, like, probably 2 weeks later, I messaged Gun, I was like, hey, when my cross-country season ends, could I rejoin the UTC? And Gun's like, yeah, sure. So then I rejoined the UTC in November of 2015, and towards the end of the UTC, I think Gun had, or my time in the UTC, I think it was actually after I had left. Like, Gun said he regretted letting me back in. At the time, Gun had a lot of people. In the 93rd, he had these things called mercenaries, which were basically people who weren't in the clan but could run dungeons with the UTC. It was basically picking up people from casual chat, because casual chat wasn't doing so hot at that point. And basically Gun let me in because he let everybody in at that point. Now, I went to dungeon runs for a couple weeks, and then at that point I started dating Alice. I didn't play for a month. By the time I came back, Gun had stepped down out of his position for some personal life issues, and Hawk and Argo took over, and that was a shit show. By the time Gun came back in April, a lot of things had changed. I was more UTC man than a dungeoneer, strictly running dungeons. I did a lot of stuff just hanging out in the main UTC Discord with Irish and friends, mainly Finn. Finn was also in the 93rd, but Finn didn't really do dungeons. Actually, I don't remember if Finn was in the 93rd, if he transferred in to the 93rd after. It might have been like May when Finn joined the 93rd. I think he might have been I think he was a regimentless company member, because he was in a regiment, but the regiment disbanded. Or he got kicked out of his regiment, but you used to be able to you could be a company member and not be in a regiment. You could get kicked out of your regiment, but you wouldn't lose your company member title. It was really weird. The UTC had an interesting rank structure, and I still to this day didn't fully understand how it worked. But it did. Now at this point, Gun came back and started to cultivate the 93rd. The 93rd actually regrew and was quite large. It was the largest regiment in the clan. Actually, I think for most of the UTC's history, the 93rd was the largest. You need a lot of people to run dungeons. It wasn't probably until... Actually, I would say even through the whole time I was training people, the 93rd was still the largest, excluding the trainees and the training regiment. Here's a little tidbit. I had to cut this part into the original recording. I'm jumping back now to summer of 2016. I'm not talking about anything after that. We're back to summer of 2016, okay? Now, Gunn and me at this point got along fairly well. Gunn was actually looking for co-leaders, and I'm pretty sure I applied or asked Gunn about it, and Gunn chose Silver and Pie instead of me. And I think this was probably the first time I was like not happy with Gunn, but I got over it within a few days. Like I wasn't super upset about it for very long. But by the time Gunn went to college and I went to college because we're both the same age, Gunn became very inactive, and Pie started taking over the 93rd. You guys all, anybody who knows anything about my history knows that me and Jam went to make our regiment, but Gunn at this point was very adamantly against it. And by the end of Spooky Fest, I think Gunn had realized that I was a very upcoming and capable officer, and Irish started to put a lot of time and effort into me, and there was a lot less being put into Gunn. And I think at this point, Gunn realized that there was a very real possibility that I was going to come up through and surpass Gunn and be Irish's second in command. And for the next year and a half, Gunn worked adamantly against me to try and get me removed out of my position. Ultimately, he succeeded, but at what cost is what I would respond to that with. Now, something I intentionally left out and I'm going to get through to now is to Gunn and his leadership shortcomings, it's mainly that he's not very good at managing disputes between peoples. Like, I'll link the Google Docs for this. There's a guy in the 93rd who was just, like, the nicest way I can put it is that he was a complete Jew. He always wanted everything to be in his favor, and him and Pi had a fight, and Gunn's solution was to demote everyone out of their position except for Gunn. Gunn was still the leader, and then everybody else would be like a recruit. And Pi had to go to the Irish and be like, Gunn's fucking this up in the next year. And myself and Jam wrote like a trial on like why Kirby was in the wrong. And Irish basically had to come in and gut the regiment and get rid of Kirby, and Irish put down like executive authority. And it was like, Gunn, you're not demoting everybody. You cannot do that. That was probably the biggest example of Gunn fucking up managing people. But every like February or March, Gunn would have a problem within his regiment where people weren't managed well. Well, not really his fault. Argo and Hawk fought over Drea, and the 93rd fell apart because of that. In 2015, that's 2016, that year that happened. In 2015, me and Talma tore the regiment in half. There was only like 6 people, and a third of the regiment leaving was obviously a huge problem. But in 2017, Gunn had to go inactive for personal issues, and he promoted Alice. I think Gunn had a crush on Alice, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm fairly certain he did, though. Because nobody in their right mind would give their regiment to Alice. He should have had Silver lead it, or begged Dureshender or Pi to come back to lead it. Because at that point, Dureshender and Pi had left. And when Alice got put in charge, within a week of her getting put in charge, Meme left because Meme said, and I quote, "She doesn't know how to do any dungeons. She doesn't know what she's doing. She shouldn't be in charge." That's more of a paraphrase than a quote, but Meme really didn't like that Alice was in charge. So Alice obviously accused the UTC and was trying to get rid of me, and now Gunn had been supporting her in this and wanted her to be able to get rid of me, but she botched it, and at that point Gunn had to pretty much withdraw support and act like he was never on her side, and Alice never was going to go after Gunn for it. So at that point, nobody knew what had happened. Maybe Irish did, but I sure as shit didn't. If I did, there would have been some hell to pay for Gunn. I would have demanded that either he gets demoted or I might not have left, but I would have been very not happy. Going back to the matter at hand, Gunn didn't manage people well. His regiment always fell apart. It was a recurring theme in the UTC. Gunn was very power hungry. I would say on levels with Jam being power hungry and being slightly incompetent. I'll make another video on Jam probably in the near future, but Gunn had shortcomings that he never worked on, and after 4 years, at least 3 years anyways, where I was around and interacted with Gunn, it was very evident that he wasn't going to change. Now, I don't like Gunn. I don't think he's a good person. Gunn would probably say the same things about me, I'm almost fairly certain. Out of people in the UTC, I would say I hated Gunn way more than I ever hated Irish. Well, Gunn got me into the clan. Once Gunn realized that I was going to be more competent than him, he just went after me. And I'm going to be entirely honest. In all of 10, I spent the entire time trying to find somebody to take my position. The whole time I was trying to recruit somebody to take my spot, and it never happened. I never found anybody who was nearly as competent as me. So that part of me doesn't understand why Gunn didn't want to usher in the next generation, but sometimes it's not easy to understand people who are power hungry. Well, with that, this is going to be the end of this short little series. I don't think this one was too long. This is probably only about 10 to 15 minutes. There wasn't a hell of a lot to talk about. I also did a lot of takes on this. I've been recording for probably about 45 minutes to an hour. But I hope you guys enjoy. If these videos continue to get decent views and people actually watch the videos, like the watch time in the Irish ones wasn't terrible. It was somewhere around like 40% of the video, which isn't bad. So if it stays up, the analytics aren't bad, I'll keep doing this. If not, I'll go back to the shorter, like 5-minute video formats that I had been running for a very long time now. I hope you guys enjoy this. If you have, you know what? Here, we'll do this. If somebody leaves a comment with somebody they want me to talk about from Mine Z, I'll add it to a list. And I'll give it like a day or two. And at that point, I will choose somebody from that list. If nobody comments anybody, I'm probably doing Jammer Alice next. So we'll see that. We'll see.